brother's gonna work it out. The 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 brother's gonna work it out.
In East Gippsland, I think 15% of operations are thinning, so that's 85% old growth. Anywhere up between 70 and 90% of old growth logs are taken out, are wood chipped. That's only what's taken out. Like a lot of that, maybe up to 50%, might be left lying in the forest and used to fuel their high intensity liquid petroleum regeneration burns. Most timber that's logged in East Gippsland, well, I shouldn't say timber, most big trees that are taken out of here end up at the Harris Shower wood chip mill in Eden, and that's exported to Japan. The lowest figure that we found is 9 cents a tonne, but the syndicates that are logging here, royalty that they're paying is 9 cents a tonne. Goes to Japan to make cheap magazines, toilet paper, packaging products, cardboard. So these old growth trees aren't even being used to make the highest quality products. That's why Shower have an agenda to turn most of East Gippsland's old growth forests into a virtual plantation, which will then be intensively managed over the next 20, 50 years or whatever, as long as they need the resource.
The forest is obliterated, literally, it's destroyed, it's a lunar landscape, so to speak. Clear-felled everything, or left a few trees, everything is burnt in the understory to promote the regeneration of eucalypts. All of the significance, that is the rare, the less common, the specialist species of forest ecosystems such as gliders, some of the possums, the owls, many lizards, quolls, potoroos. You lose a whole host of species that depend on tree hollows, for example.
NRE is a major land manager in Victoria. Victoria total area is about 22 million hectares. About a third of it is public land. So about 7 million hectares of Victoria is public land, which is quite unique in an Australian context. Half of that public land is state forest, and we make available to the timber industry timber from those lands. I don't think there's any evidence of a loss of a species in the flora and fauna attributable to timber harvesting. There might be. We tend to think in terms of loss of protection of the species, not of the protection of the individual. Often you meet school kids and they say, yeah, well, what about the possum that lived in the tree? And there's no doubt there's impacts on individual animals or individual plants on a site. But if you look at overall, if you look at the health and viability of the species in that location, it's protected. The possums come back, or the plants come back, or they're protected in another location.
The fact that the Goolgool catchment itself is quite unique in that it's relatively undisturbed. It has overlap rainforest, it's negligible disturbance, really high density of species of birds and mammals, and a high density of endangered and rare threatened species of plants and mammals. to them, the fact that all those values have come together in one place doesn't matter, because they could pick each of those and say they've been represented somewhere else.
What we're doing to the forest today, we are literally destroying millions of years of evolution.
My name's Mick Beckers. I'm an authorised officer under the Conservation Forest and Lands Act. Your presence on this creek today, by being here, you're hindering the lawful operation that we have here.
Water quantities really come into sharp focus in the last 10 years or so, and particularly since Victoria's been experiencing this prolonged drought and water storages are starting to drop, and it's on the news every night of the week. So the whole water quantity issue and Melbourne's long-term supply of water has become on a lot of people's minds. There was some work done a number of years ago by what was the old Border Works, looking at the impacts of timber harvesting and or wildfire on water quantity from forests. And there's a pretty important piece of work that came up with a thing called Gazera's curve. Without going into too much of the science or the jargon, it basically found that in ash-type forests, the water yield dropped by half almost immediately after an area was either burned or logged. And it took some considerable period of time until that water yield returned to what it was pre-logging and burning.
So most of the silt that enters the streams and creeks actually is generated by roads. I can't remember the figure that I've seen quite a lot of sediment enters the creeks. And then once it's in the creeks, it can have a devastating impact on freshwater species such as fish, because what happens is the sediment enters the creek and it will settle on the pebbles or the rocks, and it will fill up holes or fill up snags that the fish need to lay their eggs in. Well, we estimate about 30,000 hectares of native forest has been logged each year. That's year 2000 figures. Probably about 16,000 hectares of that will be old growth, mainly based in East Gippsland. 90% of the trees being felled will be used as wood chips for mainly Japanese paper makers and paper mills.
was no doubt wonderful at the time for the department to be telling the ministers, yes, Minister, you can expand the size of the national parks, and the Greens will love you, and you still maintain the licence commitments for the industry, so they'll love you too. I mean, everybody's a winner. So I mean, that would be a nice thing to be telling the minister. The reality is that doesn't seem to have been the case. It doesn't seem to have translated onto the ground.
They didn't respond. We had Barbara Triggs, who's the, you know, she's nationally accredited, you know, like SCAT sort of identifier for endangered species. She identified the SCAT last year. They said, the NRE said they would send up flora and fauna to do some surveying and to, you know, look at that SCAT, and they didn't come up. So it's just, you know, totally, you know, negligible on the department's behalf. And this is what it's about here, is the NRE and the department and the government who are forcing workers like yourself to come into these areas, forcing us to seem like we're on opposing sides when we're actually trying to work out a sustainable industry in many industries.
Sustainable yield can best be described, if you want an analogy, as interest on a bank account. So you've got a certain amount of capital and it's growing at a certain rate. And the harvesting level is designed in order that you take no more than the annual growth across an entire forest area. That's the simplest analogy I can use.
The sustainable yield, the amount of forest that's allowed to be taken out each year, is only based on sawlog quotas, and that's called sustainable because it's supposed to be taken out at the rate at which the forest can grow back. But sustainable yield figures do not take into account the residual logs, which is most of the logs being cut down and taken out of the forest. So the figure itself is incredibly unrealistic and unscientific. Even when they do reduce those yields, probably the amount that's been reduced will just go over into residual logs. That would be business as usual. Same machine turning over, whether it be for wood chips or wood-fired plough pan, power plant or charcoal plant. It's the same process, and it's minimal jobs and maximum ecological destruction and really unfriendly silvicultural program that supposedly regenerates the forest, but it actually creates a tree farm where there once was old biodiverse forests.
some of these logging contractors have got an awful lot at stake. They've got millions of dollars worth of equipment that's lying idle that they can't operate. They can't do what they believe is right and lawful because they've got a group of greenies like chain themselves to it, and they want to strangle them. So you've got to try and keep them to one side and hear what the environmental people are saying and try and work through what's a pretty tense and passionate time and allow things to continue, and then have some processes whereby you can at least listen to the community. And in small communities, it's like in East Gippsland, it gets pretty tough. Because our staff, there's an awful lot of verbal abuse from all sides, and our staff find it a bit tough because they've got their kids in the primary school like everyone else. They have to go to the supermarket like everyone else. They like to go to the footy on a Saturday like everyone else. So we have to be part of the community, while at the same time we're sort of stuck in the middle between these two, passionately opposing groups, the timber industry and the environmental movement. And that's a hard call. And I must say, it wears staff down, it wears all of us down, to try and remain balanced, if you like. And at the same time, we don't want violence on the site. No one does. But you've got to accept that these people have a right to demonstrate, if you like. But that's how they demonstrate, and how they do that, and whether they're entitled to obstruct someone else. That's really what it's about.
And we know that at the mill at Dashour there's roughly between 25 and 30 people working there. And this is a huge mill that takes volumes from all over East Gippsland and the southeast forests. So that level of employment doesn't justify the destruction. The term "get a real job" I think really needs to be turned around to these people, because it's not actually a viable job. It's not a job that's responsible to the rest of the community or to the environment or to the long-term future.
Slid in underneath the track there. Thought you were going to get pulled down.
Political parties, the two main parties obviously, not much difference between them, and their election campaigns are supported by large companies, often with interests in wood chipping, North, Dashour, many of the banks that, Commonwealth Bank and Westpac and all those sort of things have been associated with supporting wood chip companies in indirect ways that you have to trace through company searches and stuff. So the whole thing goes to the highest level. So basically the bureaucrats that we work with, they're just having their strings pulled by big companies who are being driven by the larger forces of capitalism. It doesn't really have a face. And government bureaucrats who really don't want to take any risks, can't take any risks really. They're just part of a machine, and they're trained. The schools that they go to and the universities that they are trained in justify this type of exploitation in some sort of pseudo-scientific way, I suppose. And they just put their blinkers on and do their job and think they're doing a good job, I suppose. When they come out here and we have talks with them, it's quite clear that they know. It's pretty clear, just under the surface, they know what they're doing is wrong and not long-term. But most of them, I think, are very disempowered, most of the lower-level government bureaucrats. So we don't have much recourse, because that's who mainly we have contact with, is local and regional government bureaucrats who we're looking for answers to and who don't have answers.
cop cars. So fun. So and that's what happened yesterday. So do you reckon that? What do you reckon that? That works?
I wouldn't do it.
Playing along, I'm an authorised forest officer. By being on this logging coop to obstruct a lawful forest operation and committing an offence against the Conservation Forest and Lands Act. I'm asking for your cooperation to please cease your activities and remove yourself to a location where you are no longer obstructing the forest operation. The point is outside the logging coop where there is pink tape across the road. If you refuse this request, you may be arrested. I would also ask that you remove all your gear and personal equipment that you have brought.
We're going to stay here!
Alright, happy to come? With me? Okay, let's go.
Stinks, Sam.
Guys, you're not going to break us. Leave it while you still can.
Yeah, good luck, guys.
Where you want to go?
Hey!
Even what you see, kingdom is at hand, promised land is at your feet. Can and will become when we aspire to be. If heaven's here on earth, if we have faith in humankind and respect for what is earthly, and an unfaltering belief, the truth is divinity, and heaven's here on earth. I've seen spirits, I've met angels, touched creations, beautiful and wondrous.
Paper Link's always argued that they want bright white paper. That's what the consumers demand. And this little bit of grey tint in the paper, they reckon it puts consumers off, but I reckon they just haven't marketed it right. If they did it with the right marketing and marketed recycled paper in the right way, it'd sell like hotcakes. But there's no incentive because they get their native forest for free almost, so they're quite happy with the status quo and bright white paper.
Can we make better use of the timber resource? The answer is absolutely yes. And should we? Yes. I would also argue that, you know, should we, if people say, well, you should move out of native forests into plantations, my response is, well, no, plantations, yes, we should develop plantations as an option, and in fact my preference would be perhaps more reforestation than straight plantation, because there's more biodiversity in that. Wood chip on the boat, if you like, I think is around about $100 a tonne. It varies, a bit either way, but wood for furniture is over $1,000 a tonne. And if you start value adding by making furniture componentry or what have you, you keep going up the value add chain. So I think the industry is fairly keen on where it's going.
Come out here to Gulungu, because no amount of what I can say or no amount of information that you can read can prepare you for the experience of a old growth forest that's been growing for millennia and without disturbance. You can't ever impart that to someone unless they come and experience it. lot of people that have come in from the city said they've never experienced anything like it, and that transforms their life. And once that environment is gone, then that's a bit of a human spirit that's gone too. Like, not that I'm saying this forest had anything human about it, but what it can give us, how it can enrich us, is such an incredible thing. And when that's taken away, I think we're really a lot poorer. Like our experience on this earth is a lot less rich. Like if we can't come to places like this.